Be willing to let certain aspects of yourself be seen that you never did before so they can have a new lens perspective on you.
This is The Deep Dive with Adam Roa.
What's up, deep divers? Thank you very much for joining me for another episode. My name is Adam Roa. I am your host of the Deep Dive podcast, and today is a deep dive musing, which means that it's just you and me. It's just you and me here. I got this microphone and I want to talk about what's alive for me. And that's the holidays and family, because there's a lot of, spending time with family. And even if you're not physically spending time with them, there's often, phone calls and different things. And so it's just a different time of year. And, it's funny because there's almost like this obligation, right? So many people I talk to, it's like, yeah, I got to go back and spend it with family, or yeah, I can't do that because I have to spend it with family. So there's a interesting dynamic when it comes to family. And that's what I want to talk about it today. I want to talk about that. And before I get started into that, I just want to remind you that, Christmas is right around the corner, right? And there's still some time to gift people that Permission album you've been hearing so much about. Now, my musical ceremonial experience, Permission, is available. It's on my website, adamroa.com. I can put a link in the show notes. And it's a 45-minute journey into personal development, storytelling, art, poetry, the inner child, the divine masculine. How did we create this world we're living in? Scarcity versus abundance. It dives into all of these things. It's a really unique and innovative approach to the personal development world. So if you enjoy my poetry, if you enjoy my thoughts, I encourage you to check it out and even make it a gift for people that you're like, if you handed them that book that said, expand yourself, they might be a little upset. But if you gift them the album, it's just a different thing because it's art, right? You've probably heard me talk about that on previous podcasts. Anyway, check that out. And then the last thing is, if you've been enjoying these podcasts, please leave a review on iTunes. Really help the algorithm in that way. Subscribe on YouTube. Anything to continue to tell these computers, AI software that you enjoy this, so that other people can find it. It would really help out. So thank you very much. And then, let's talk about the holiday season and family and the struggle that sometimes happens and why it happens. That's the biggest thing. More than anything else, I want you to understand why it can be so difficult. Everyone's family is different. So what you actually went through as a child and your upbringing and what scars you might carry are going to be different than someone else's. The challenges that you face in relation to your family is going to be unique to you. There'll be people who can empathize in some way and maybe have some similarities, but it's still your unique experience. Now, the reason why I believe it is so difficult to be around family at times is because there's this field, there's this energy, there's this perspective that your family will have of you and you will have of them that is probably not very current. Unless you're someone who's really close with your family and you talk a lot and you share your emotional experience, you share what you're learning about yourself and about life regularly. If you do that, then wonderful. That's amazing. And they probably have a really great idea of who you are. And you probably have a really amazing relationship. And you probably don't even really need to listen to this podcast necessarily because you're like, I don't relate to that. And this may give you some insight into what is the experience of what I think is actually the majority of people that I've spoken to, which is this difficulty being around their family. And part of that is the fact that the old perspective carries weight. It's like a force field projected out onto someone else. So have you ever had that experience where you're around your family and you say something and someone responds in a certain way that triggers you? And all of a sudden, you're like behaving in a way that you haven't behaved in years, months, years, weeks, whatever, just around your friends, around your coworker. Like you're just not that person. And yet somehow, some way, it just comes out in that moment. That is us. When that happens, that's us falling back into a way of being that is potentially stored in the body that gets triggered in that moment. It just gets activated. And all of a sudden that 7-year-old me is like, screw you, and responds from that place. And one of the most powerful things about tribe, about community, is that the community will hold you in the light of who you want to be. If it's a supportive community, if it's the type that you're choosing, that you want, right? It's why I created the Art of Choosing Love Facebook group, so that even people who don't have it necessarily in their lives could find it online. That's a free group to join, by the way, if you're searching for that, or if you'd like to be a part of that. It's on Facebook. It's just called the Art of Choosing Love, free to join. I think we have 4,500 members. It's amazing. And being around people who see you as your highest, as being someone who is loving, as someone who is kind, as someone who is intelligent, that allows you to more easily step into that and believe it about yourself. It's part of the reason why we really are inspired by kind of like the underdog story, is because we recognize how hard it is to believe in ourselves when no one else does. That's why there's so many of these movies and stories about the power of having one person beside yourself who really believes in you. Because what other people believe about you carries weight. Think about it for a moment. Think about someone like a Donald Trump. So much of the world believes him to be narcissistic, believes him to be stupid, believes him to be greedy, believes him to be a bad person. Do you think that has no impact on him? There's a field, I believe, that in many ways his behavior at times is validating what so many people believe about him. Because he's like, screw it. I know that for myself. I grew up around people like this, and I experienced it myself, where like people thought that I was like a bit of a troublemaker in a certain sense, like in the classroom, nothing bad, but just like always talking, always whatever. And it's like, fine. Like, you think that about me? Great. I'll just be that. Seems silly, but like, think about all the teenagers that are aware that so many people think that they're not good students, or they think that they are good students, and how those kids fall into that. Kids who are told, oh, you're a dropout, you're a loser, you're never going to amount to anything. Kids who are told that by their parents, or that have that projected on them by their teachers, they take that on. It affects them. And for myself, even in the other direction, be like, oh, you're smart. This comes easy to you. This thing's, sure, that's a good thing because I believe a lot of that. And it created a pressure. Like, people expect this of me. I got to do it. And so when it comes to family, you may have spent all year working on yourself, personal development, growth, expansion, learned so much about why you are the way you are. You've done so much work to start to shift those things into being more of who you want to be. And yet when you get around family, they don't know all that growth. They still have the idea of you from all the years that they've known you. And so the weight of your past is being projected out onto you by these family members, especially if they're the kind that you don't see very often or talk to at a deep level. And so the energy, think about, I'm using all these examples. Hopefully this is helpful to you, just all these different ways of looking at it. But imagine, for example, you had like a bully in high school, someone who bullied you really bad, and you didn't see them for years, but then you run into them. Do you think because of the fact that you haven't seen them in years, when you run into them, you're immediately going to be like, hey, what's up? How's it going? All's forgiven, all good. Or do you think there's a part of you that may go and experience that moment of, this is the bully? We carry it with us until we have evidence to shift it, or unless we consciously shift it. Like, you could do that work. And like, I could see it being something where you were bullied and then you do this process, whatever it is. It could be an ayahuasca ceremony, or it could just be some somatic work or whatever, some anger therapy. And you forgive that bully, but you did the conscious work on it. So when you run into them, it's been released. But if you haven't done that and you haven't even thought about them really, when you run into them, they're the bully. That hasn't shifted yet. And then maybe you realize, you talk to them and they're really nice. They apologize. They're like, oh, and that shifts. Now, the next time you run into them, it'll be a different experience. But with family, what's interesting about that is there's this depth to the connection that is unique to family. You are blood relatives that spent years of your lives together, your whole life. You've known them your whole life. And so what happens? There's all of that history, all of that weight of who you used to be, that is the lens by which you're being seen. And by the way, this works in the other direction. If you're not consciously attempting to rewrite the story of how you've seen your family members, you are still seeing them through the lens of the past. To be fair, every single moment, you're seeing it through the lens of the past. So like, there is some level of that. I want to acknowledge that. And you can get more recent. You can upgrade your software to the newest version, so to speak. And so this can be challenging when you're around family members during this time who still treat you, you feel like you're still treated like a kid. You're still seen as the screw up. You still feel like you need to be perfect. You still see your mother or father as not caring, like whatever it is that's going on in either direction. The fact that you have the awareness of what is happening gives you the opportunity to choose something different. Can you enter into the Christmas dinner and say, you know what? I want to actually intentionally create a new understanding of who these people are. I want to offer up an opportunity for them to see different sides of me that they wouldn't know because I haven't shared it with them. This is how you start to shift the relationships. In my family, communication hasn't been like the strongest thing, but the beautiful thing about it is I put out all of this content about the journey that I'm on. I put out all of this content about my journey and what I'm learning and sharing it so openly that my family, many of them do listen or watch these videos or listen to the podcast or whatever it is. That's helping create a new idea of who I am. So when I go back home, it's a shift. It's beautiful. And that's been an awesome way of doing it without needing to necessarily communicate directly about it, because it's been, it hasn't been our strength, but it's shifting. My mother's on this beautiful, she's retired and she's on this beautiful self-awakening journey for herself. My sister, the same thing. Like, everyone's on these journeys of self-discovery and expansion. And if I don't want to just see them as how I thought they were or who I thought they were, I get to be in communication with what they're learning. I get to have conversations about what they want for themselves and what they've discovered recently to keep the relationship up to date. Because a projection of the past will hold them in that. So during this holiday season, take your consciousness into it and be intentional with discovering who your family is now. Be willing to let certain aspects of yourself be seen that you never did before, so they can have a new lens perspective on you. You used to be a partier and a drinker and do stupid stuff? Great. Let them know the things that aren't that. Let them know that you understand that you were that. Because if they're not seeing you as that anymore, it's going to actually help you continue to shift into the direction you want to go. It's not completely selfless. This will support you in your own evolution, in your own growth, in the direction that you want to go. This applies beyond family, by the way. This applies to every single person you meet, and letting them see you as the person that you desire to be, to the version of yourself that you are consciously creating. But very few are as hard as family. So I hope you have a really happy holidays. I hope that this helps you and supports you in having the most expansive time with your families that it possibly can. I want to remind you that always, in all ways, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved.